It's been a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. You've come a long way from where we began, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again. Jack Conway blindly followed George W. Bush's Iraq War, which saw over 1 million Iraqi people genocided.
I support the President on Iraq. I support our Commander-in-Chief in the area of foreign affairs. I'm glad we went through this process. President Bush went to the Congress. He asked for authorization to continue the war on terror by going into Iraq. I'm glad we had the process with Congress. I'm glad that Congress asked him to work with our strategic international partners. He asked him to work with the UN. I think we should go to the UN, get as many partners as we can, hopefully the entire Security Council, and then move forward against Saddam Hussein.
Geoff Young tried to citizens arrest Dick Cheney for war crimes. Jack Conway is disrespectful to his own mother.
You're looking at one tough son of a bitch.
Jack Conway protected the 1% during America's Great Recession of 2008 and 2009, which nearly blew up the world. It weakened the American dollar and has changed the balance of world power substantially by his support of protecting and extending the Bush tax cuts.
The issue of fiscal responsibility is one where Democrats and Republicans are going to have to work together. And when it comes to tax policy, I'll answer the question here today. Extend those tax cuts. This is not any time to be raising taxes in a recession like we're in right now. Extend them. Extend them.
I think that this is no time to be raising taxes. In a recession like this is no time to be raising taxes, and we ought to just extend them for some period of time. I have to see what that is. I don't know, 5, 8, 10 years, something like that, but they ought to be extended for some period of time.
Hey, Jack.
I differ from the Obama administration on this. I don't think that a recession is any time to be raising taxes. So I've called for extending all of the Bush tax cuts.
I think the Bush tax cuts ought to be extended for some period of time.
Geoff Young, the Occupy candidate who gallantly defends the 99%, is the most pro-labor and union candidate in the race. Geoff Young supports a Kentucky version of the Employee Free Choice Act.
We had a couple of Republicans talking about implementing right to bust unions. That's what I call it. That's a code word. Right to work is a code word. What they're really talking about is class warfare against working people. In states where unions are strong, the middle class is strong. Their economies do better. We need more unions and stronger unions, not union busting. So I'm running against the whole Republican Party.
Jack Conway supports the Patriot Act. Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, Matt Bevin, and Geoff Young do not.
I've disagreed with him on the terror trials in New York City.
Well, no. Eric Holder is proposed to civilian court. I don't think that's a good idea. I'd rather see him in military tribunals. Okay. And these trials are so sensational now. These big trials. I mean, in the Martha Stewart trial, you had people coming out sending signals from the steps and what was found, and it's on CNN and Court TV and everything else. The only problem here is this is going to be an Al Jazeera.
Jack Conway believes in military tribunals for enemy combatants because Jack Conway believes in absolute power, total tyranny, and believes that, I believe because of his position on this, that he will be a maximum leader, a fascist plutocrat, czar, dictator to be. Geoff Young is anti-tyranny.
You're looking at one tough son of a bitch.
Jack Conway is more fascist than Kim Jong-un of North Korea with his white-collar mafia's failed Richard Milhous Nixon's 1971 drug war and cannabis prohibition, creating many felons who can never vote for his opponents over the thousands of lives that Jack Conway has wrecked. What a perfect racket. Arrest somebody, put a felony on them, now they can't vote.
Should people be arrested for smoking marijuana in Kentucky?
I think so. Absolutely. It's against the law.
And should they be put in prison?
Mr. Conway, your response.
Well, first of all, I want to go back to Dr. Paul's last answer. He was saying I was trying to be a liberal Democrat. I'm not going to take a lecture on being a liberal from a guy who thinks that drugs aren't a pressing issue, who said that nonviolent activity should never be a crime, and who said states ought to be able to legalize marijuana.
That's fine now. I'll overrule the gentleman to my right.
Are you in favor of hemp farming for Kentucky?
Am I in favor of hemp farming for Kentucky? It's a law enforcement issue. The problem with hemp is it's and when you're trying to eradicate marijuana, which is a major law enforcement issue in Kentucky, it is. I know how difficult it can be for law enforcement to make the distinction, and so I think we need to leave that issue to those in law enforcement who are advising us on it. And if there's a difficulty in distinguishing between hemp and marijuana, then we shouldn't have hemp farming in Kentucky, because it's more of a law enforcement issue about making certain we don't let a gateway drug get into the marketplace.
However, he says using federal money to battle the drug problem is not working.
I personally think we've been trying the federal solution, and there may be some good aspects to it, but it's also, we're still failing. We're not getting rid of the drug problem.
Hey, Jack.
Hey, how you doing?
If you're elected, what about medical marijuana? What are you going to do about it?
I'm not for it. How you doing?
If you're elected, what about medical marijuana? What are you going to do about it?
I'm not for it.
You're not for it?
No, I'm not for it.
You're looking at one tough son of a bitch.
Geoff Young is in favor of repealing prohibition and ending police brutality and cruel and unusual punishments by jailers and corruption everywhere.
I favor increased funding for drug treatment, and I oppose longer sentences. I oppose the war on drugs, which was started by Republican President Richard Nixon decades ago. The basic thrust of the war on drugs was misguided, and it basically has failed. It's a criminalizing addiction, and I'm opposed to it.
Geoff Young is in favor of restoring voting rights to ex-felons. They've done their time. They've paid their debt to society. Now let's accept them back into the community. In fact, how racist. All you gotta do is throw a felony on somebody, then you can discriminate them in jobs, in life, right? You can make sure in housing, make sure they never go anywhere. So that's Jim Crow. That's the new Jim Crow. And then you could throw them in jail. Chain gangs. Then there's police brutality, prisons. The drug war. They're racist. It's affecting all people. All people matter, but Black lives matter. They matter. You gotta say that first, right? All lives matter. Black lives matter also. Black lives matter. Jack Conway prosecuted many anti-homosexual cases.
And where do you stand on gay marriage? Are you with the president on that?
I think that
one woman,
I think I'm with the president on that. I think marriage is a sacred institution between a man and a woman, and it's an issue that ought to be left to the states.
Geoff Young is pro-gay marriage. Jack Conway refuses to investigate Leon Bracken's murder, April 21st, 2011. On the Watterson Expressway in Louisville, murdered by 4 LMPD police officers, and 30 other public officials were named in the complaint.
Finally stopped on the Watterson Expressway and was arrested. Officers then approached Brackens, who says he had his seatbelt on and his hands up.
He slammed me to the ground, and then at the same time, about 3 or 4 jumping on at the same time. Then all of a sudden, I started feeling beating on me with their fists or sticks, whatever, I don't know.
He says a group of officers savagely beat him.
I'm already pinned, I can't move nothing on my body, and one just walks up and stomps my shoulder. I'm screaming, hollering, begging for my life, asking him, please don't, I ain't do nothing. I passed out.
When an ambulance arrived, an EMS worker asked an officer what he should state as the cause of Bracken's injuries. Bracken says the officer said, quote, I don't give a blank, make up something.
Jack Conway has refused to investigate the murder of Samantha Ramsey. in Boone County, which happened April 26, 2014. Not just a year ago.
Here he is. He's going to murder her. He's going to kill her.
And there's also 2 suspicious murders that just recently happened by these so-called people who are supposed to protect and serve us. Jesse Gibbons, who was unarmed, was murdered in Richmond, September 13th, 2014.
Bro, what the fuck? This cops out here busting, I swear to God. This is World Star Entertainment, just listen TBG, Fat Boy baby. Get the fuck down. Oh my God, bro. This is Richmond, Kentucky right here. This cops out here busting. Oh my God, man. Bro, this shit is crazy. Oh my God, look at this shit. What the fuck? What the?
Carter Ray Castle in McGulphin County, January 19th, 2012. He was murdered too. Those 2 are very suspicious cases. Very suspicious. I'm not as 100% on those as I am with Leon Brackens in 2011, April 21st, and Samantha Ramsey in Boone County. Those are clear-cut murder cases. They murdered somebody. And when it comes to the value of a life versus the value of property, the life of a single human being is worth 1,000,000 times more than all the property of the richest men on earth. There is no price you could put on life. Everything that Samantha Ramsey's is and will ever be has ceased. That's it. That's the end of her chapter. 0 to 19. She'll be young forever. And for what? What was the crime? That she deserved death? Hell, it's hard to get, anybody to be executed. She would have had a public trial and everything else in order to get executed. What was her crime? What was Leon Bracken's crime? He's the one that called 911. Jesse Gibbons was unarmed. They said it was a shootout, right? Because they shot a whole bunch of bullets into him. McGulphin County, Carter Ray Castle, all the news reports forget to mention why the warrant was even released in the first place. And supposedly he was by himself and they're yelling at him. He didn't want to go. They tased him and then they killed him. So those are suspicious ones, those 2. Jesse Gibbons and Carter Ray Castle. But Leon Brackens and Samantha Ramsey is murder. And Jack Conway is the Attorney General.
You're looking at one tough son of a bitch.
Jack Conway is no Marilyn J. Mosby. Marilyn J. Mosby was the Attorney General in Maryland who has filed charges on the 6 Baltimore police officers that murdered Freddie Gray.
To the thousands of city residents, community organizers, faith leaders, and political leaders that chose to march peacefully throughout Baltimore, I commend your courage to stand for justice. As the city's chief prosecutor, I've been sworn to uphold justice and to treat every individual within the jurisdiction of Baltimore City equally and fairly under the law. I take this oath seriously, and I want the public to know that my administration is committed to creating a fair and equitable justice system for all. The findings of our comprehensive, thorough, and independent investigation, coupled with the medical examiner's determination that Mr. Gray's death was a homicide, which we received today, has led us to believe that we have probable cause to file criminal charges. While each of these officers are presumed innocent until proven guilty, we have brought the following charges. Officer Caesar Goodson is being charged with second-degree depraved heart murder, involuntary manslaughter, second-degree negligent assault, manslaughter by vehicle by means of gross negligence, manslaughter by vehicle by means of criminal negligence, misconduct in office, or failure to secure a prisoner, failure to render aid. Officer William Porter is being charged with involuntary manslaughter, assault in the second degree, misconduct in office. Lieutenant Brian Rice is being charged with involuntary manslaughter, assault in the second degree, misconduct in office, false imprisonment. Officer Edward Nero is being charged with assault in the second degree, intentional, assault in the second degree, negligent, misconduct in office, false imprisonment. Officer Garrett Miller is being charged with intentional assault in the second degree, assault in the second degree, negligent, misconduct in office, and false imprisonment. Sergeant Alicia White is being charged with manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, second degree assault, misconduct in office. To the people of Baltimore and the demonstrators across America, I heard your call for no justice, no peace. Your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of this young man. To those that are angry, hurt, or have their own experiences of injustice at the hands of police officers, I urge you to channel the energy peacefully as we prosecute this case. I have heard your calls for no justice, no peace. However, your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of Freddie Gray. I come from 5 generations of law enforcement. My father was an officer. My mother was an officer. Several of my aunts and uncles. My recently departed and beloved grandfather was one of the founding members of the first black police organization in Massachusetts. I can tell you that the actions of these officers will not and should not in any way damage the important working relationships between police and prosecutors as we continue to fight together to reduce crime in Baltimore.
You want to talk about police accountability? That is something Jack Conway has never done. He has never prosecuted, that I know of, a murderous, corrupt cop. And if he is defending the police, then we have anarchy in the bluegrass, because that means they are doing whatever they please and just getting the court systems and the county attorneys and prosecutors to back them up no matter what crimes they commit. Nobody is above the rule of law. Nobody is above the rule of law. In fact, I think there's a greater chance of somebody being more corrupt if they're in a position of authority. If you have power, you have the ability to abuse it. Marilyn J. Mosby is a freedom fighter. She is wonderful. She is great. She has moral clarity. She stands up for what is right. Unlike Jack Conway. So Marilyn J. Mosby is no Jack Conway. Jack Conway is not in Marilyn J. Mosby. Geoff Young would prosecute all crimes, all murders. Geoff Young respects the rule of law. He respects the rule of law. Nobody's above. In a functioning, civilized, democratic republic, nobody is above the rule of law. Nobody.
You're looking at one tough son of a bitch.
Surface mining means jobs. It means cheap electricity. As long as you focus on land use, and you make certain that before you get a permit, you have a proper land use that's going to be put in place after that's done. That's what you need to focus on. That's what we're focusing on in West Virginia. That's what you ought to be focused on in Kentucky. And if the land use is going to be proper, if we're going to treat the land the right way, you know what? Let's stay with it. Let's mine Kentucky coal, and let's get the permits out faster. And that's the way I'm going to treat this issue when I'm in the United States Senate.
I believe in getting the big money out of politics, ending mountaintop removal mining, bringing home the National Guard, implementing improved Medicare for all, legalizing industrial hemp to improve prosperity, improving the economy of our rural areas by legalizing the growing of industrial hemp by Kentucky's farmers, following the Constitution, and stopping misguided efforts to make all abortions illegal.
And if you want to protest Obama, vote for me.
For 14 years in Frankfurt, I worked on developing alternative technologies for Kentucky to diversify our energy sources. There is no war on coal except that being waged by corporations that engage in fracking. in Ohio, West Virginia, states to our northeast. Natural gas, cheap natural gas from fracking is what's undercutting our coal industry, and it's causing miners to be thrown out of work.
I've never said that thing I said 1,000,000 times in front of 1,000,000 different cameras. Jack Conway's a lying liar, and so is the YouTubes. Conway's a liar about this provably true thing on tape.
Jack doesn't like to appear in the same room with me.
Why is that?
He's afraid to debate me.
Okay, make it real quick.
In a nutshell, can you explain, in a nutshell, how right-to-life laws create more abortions?
Well, there's a study behind the chart. It wasn't just somebody making up a chart. What happens is countries with liberal abortion laws also promote accurate sex education. They promote contraception for young people where the highest rate of unintended pregnancies occur.
I just want to say, I know we're out of time, but in many cases, contraception is abortion. Contraceptives are abortifacients in many instances.
Okay. That is a theological perspective, and I'm hired to make public policy and to help make the laws, and I'm in favor of lowering the abortion rate through the strategy of Planned Parenthood. Thank you.
Okay, Geoff Young, and that kind of stirred everything up a little bit today.
Their argument was primary elections don't have to be free and fair. Kentucky Constitution says all elections shall be free and fair. Well, they found a 1904 case in Kentucky, 111 years ago, saying that primary elections are not really elections.
They're not netting contests. Or what are they?
The court in 1904 made an offhand comment saying a primary is not an election, therefore it doesn't have to be free and fair.
Do you want Jack Conway to kick out the ballot himself?
I want him to quit.
Quit the race.
Quit the race. When he says income taxes will decrease. When Hal Heiner says we have to reduce the personal income tax rate. When Mr. Comer says Tennessee has no income tax, we should aim for that. When Matt Bevin says we have to do away with the death tax, and Tennessee has a 0% income tax rate. What they're talking about is class warfare against the middle class. That's what they're talking about. Sales taxes are regressive. Flat taxes end up being regressive in practice.
Jeffrey, okay. Huh? Oh, he's running for governor.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Geoff Young. I'm a Democratic candidate for governor. I don't know how many of you all are registered Democrats, but if you are, I very much appreciate your vote. I've lived in Lexington, Fayette County for the last 33 years.
Will that continue the same way under a Geoff Young administration?
Same way or better. I feel that implementing what they call Obamacare in Kentucky was by far the best thing that Governor Beshear has done in his 2 terms in office.
Like we're in right now, extend them. Extend them.
And if you want to protest Obama, vote for me.
I support that. I support the Affordable Care Act. I support President Obama's incredible effort that went into getting that passed and implemented. We Democrats at least are trying to get more Kentuckians insured.
How are you going to pay for the expansion of Medicaid when the reimbursement rate from the federal government begins to drop here in 2017?
Comprehensive tax reform.
Meaning?
In Kentucky.
What does that mean? Does that mean, I'm going to guess here, because you're more of the progressive candidate,
right,
talking about increasing taxes on the wealthiest and decreasing those on the poorest.
You got it.
Okay, well, there you go. So we solved that issue then.
Governor Mark Dayton of Minnesota did something very similar. All he had to do was raise the state tax rate, income tax rate on the very richest and most powerful citizens from 6% to 9%. Problem solved, Joe.
I want to use my time to talk about an issue that I believe is of intense importance and interest to everyone in this room, and that is the abortion issue. I consider myself strongly pro-life. In fact, the most pro-life candidate running for governor this year.
Mr. Scott mentioned ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. As governor, if I find out that a bill that's been passed by one of the houses or both houses of the General Assembly were written by ALEC, I will look at that legislation very, very suspiciously.
Pension shortfall, which of course is building as we speak here by the interest.
Right.
How do you solve that?
Same answer.
Higher tax.
Tax the rich. Reduce taxes on working poor.
And you
I would seriously consider eliminating the Kentucky sales tax completely. Sales taxes are regressive. And if we have a more progressive income tax structure, we may not need a sales tax.
And if you want to protest Obama, vote for me.
I'll say that again. The abortion rate, the number of abortions that occur per population is lower in countries like the United States that have liberal abortion laws, and that includes the Roe versus Wade Supreme Court decision in 1973, all the laws that grew out of that.
But as governor, what would you do differently, I guess, as far as that particular
I would try to undo the Right to Life movement's legislative agenda for the last 42 years. They have implemented one useless, unnecessary restriction on abortion after another. Planned Parenthood and the Democratic Party have the right strategy to reducing the abortion rates.
Is laws, a constitutional amendment called the Human Life Amendment has been built in stone in the Republican Party platform ever since 1980. If that Human Life Amendment were ever to pass, the abortion rate would go up. The Human Life Amendment is wrong. Planned Parenthood's strategy is to prevent unwanted pregnancies.
Like we're in right now? Extend them. Extend them.
Communicating with the leaders of the Right to Life movement. The true leaders of the Right to Life movement are powerful Republicans.
Out of your mind. You are out of your mind. I don't know.
The true leaders of the Right to Life movement are Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul. All right. If you're right, if abortion is murder, then I am for lowering the murder rate. The Right to Life movement, making all abortions illegal, is counterproductive. It's an immoral strategy. It will not work. It cannot work. And what I'm asking you all to consider quitting Right to Life, quitting the Republican Party, and supporting Planned Parenthood, which is the most effective abortion-lowering organization that exists anywhere. Planned Parenthood has the most effective strategy for lowering the abortion rate, and that's why I support Planned Parenthood, and the Democratic Party supports Planned Parenthood. I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Lexington. I do. I go every Sunday. I'm sorry. I thought you did. Please ask it.
Okay. It should be a mandatory thing that you are Christian to live in this country because we're founded on that. But besides that, what are you going to do as a Christian and our representative to stop women from being circumcised?
Where?
In our country, around the world. Around the world. It doesn't matter where it's happening.
That's a horrible act of violence. I'm against it. As governor of Kentucky, I'll oppose female circumcision.
Young, I'm the only progressive Democrat running this year for governor. I'm the only Democrat who showed up here today.
There's a question in the back, please.
Okay, I'm make it easier for you. You know that Kentucky is ranked top 10 of the most corrupted state in America.
Yeah.
Well, right now, we have many problems in Kentucky. One of them is our judicial branch. It can be bought. Prosecutor take bribes. On one hand, practice law. Next day, he would dismiss the case.
I think you're right.
Let's get the permits out fast. And that's the way I'm going to treat this issue when I'm in the United States Senate.
And if you want to protest Obama, vote for me.
I support the president on Iraq. I support our commander-in-chief in the area of foreign affairs. I'm glad we went through this process. President Bush went to the Congress. He asked for authorization to continue the war on terror by going into Iraq.
To keep the personal income tax and to add some tax brackets at the very highest level. The 1% richest and most powerful Kentuckians are not pulling their weight. They're trying to unload the tax burden in this Commonwealth on poor people. Well, that's a scandal. And on working people. And on the middle class. And the best way to improve the prospects for real estate in Kentucky is to grow the middle class, not launch a class war against us.
Mr. Conway, your response.
Well, first of all, I want to go back to Dr. Paul's last answer. He was saying I was trying to be a liberal Democrat. I'm not going to take a lecture on being a liberal from a guy who thinks that drugs aren't a pressing issue, who said that nonviolent activity should never be a crime, and who said states ought to be able to legalize marijuana.
Racism, to me, equals prejudice times power, institutional power.
Does Kentucky have institutional racism right now?
You bet it does.
And give me an example.
The Kentucky Republican Party is a racist institution.
Traffic certainly will part when Vice President Joe Biden is escorted from Kentucky to Indiana Monday. And there's no question some political heavy hitters will be at both locations. But there will also be some notable players missing. Candidate and Kentucky Attorney General Jack Conway will not.
Here's an instance where I'm being independent for Kentucky and breaking with the administration, and I will always do that when I'm your next United States Senator.
Second thing is this. Our current car title, it is not printed in Kentucky, it is printed in Tennessee. Billions of dollars is let the Tennessee company making money without paying a single dime of Kentucky taxes. Now the current administrator is a Democrat. My question as your Democrat, if you got elected and governor, how are you going to correct your fellow Democrats' problem? Corruption.